will see you in November.
Okay.
I'm interested in precisely the sorts of cases that you were raising and the fact that there is, especially where there are reasons to not translate, or there's a right to not translate for a situational, political, or strategic reason. And so in this case of just mentioned that we in a sense of political space for untranslatability, we could think about a whole structure of a curriculum in the humanities that would look at those spaces. It's not that nothing is categorically translatable if you work at it long enough, but that you want to immediately rush to the equivalence, and it's a very different impulse. And so the point here would be, if you take the roadblocks, if you look at the situational moments of violence, which are in a sense beyond translation, if you look at the different nuances of what it means to translate Allah or to use the term God, and whose rights are at stake in a situation when they decide not to translate or to translate. That's the sort of thing that I think is a set of general principles we could use to reconfigure how we think about humanities and this public order. So that's really the kind of a general point, but each of your examples seem to me, especially even the boy not recognizing the uncle or the father, it's part of a larger strategy, tactics, but also strategy of rights to not be forced to identify your language. It's a form of civil disobedience. The politics of non-translation or untranslation emerge there. And so I think a lot of this just takes us back to a kind of situation where we're really to the untranslatable, not as this kind of allegorical thing where that's the other over there, but much more in the context.
I just want to put an empirical thing in there. Okay? When it is not a contest between three Abrahamic religions, the situation is a little bit different. In India, for example, Hindus are in such majority that for the Bengali speakers, I'm a Bengali speaker, and there is a big tradition of Bengali Islam, to say Allah is Bhagavan, which the word that you don't know, would be an insane kind of giving into the, sometimes, not very often, but not that, I mean, we are looking at the possibility of a prime minister who might bring it back, the sometimes genocidal hostility. It is political. It's not a question of simply translating. On the other hand, I don't want to talk too much about this, the secularist majoritarians, like Farhad Mazhar in Bangladesh, where the Muslims are the majority, or, myself in India, instead of saying my word Bhagwan, I'll say Khuda. Allah seems to be a little difficult to touch, but I admit, but I'll say Khuda Jana.
It's interesting because Persian is probably the one language that have kept in so strongly this Khuda. And by the way, Khuda is the salute that President Barack Obama had for Rouhani before they dismantled.
I know it.
For them to dismantle everything nuclear they had over there. So, but you would not say, for example, Insha Khuda.
No, and inshallah we also say. So, of course, that's become creolized in all languages.
Yes. You could.
It does, because it's not really an Allah thing. Anyway, I don't want to go on about this. And Farhad, who's in Bangladesh, he really draws the opposition from people who say, why are you giving in to the Hindus? I'm not giving in to the Hindus. I'm using my mother tongue. And use words other than Allah for describing what in English we call God. So, this is something, it's a very interesting phenomenon which ought to be taken almost as unique, because mostly you have a choice between the three Abrahamics, whereas this is not the case. And just as you said, you have examples from Wolof, so also I have, it's my mother tongue. And so this is a very, very interesting thing. I wish I could talk a little bit about Lalon Shah, but that's not the point. So,
Yeah, so just first of all, thanks for 2 wonderful talks. I just had a quick question for, sorry?
Speak up.
I just had a quick question for Professor Apter about the just general theoretical framework of your talk. So you encourage us, I think very helpfully, to think of sovereignty, not in sovereignty at the border, not in terms of a kind of absolute securing of the border, but as in terms of a kind of differential play between flow and insalubriousness, passports that pass and passports that don't pass. And you encourage us also to think about that site as a site of performativity. And so the term performativity returned at several points in your talk and played a very central role. And then, of course, you close with this very interesting video of the performativity, you could say almost a theatricality at the border being mobilized in a particular way. And I think that there's a way in which understanding the site of the checkpoint as a site of performativity encourages a certain kind of hopefulness about, okay, if this is a site of performativity, maybe it's in a kind of Foucauldian capillary sense a site of the disarticulation of sovereign power as well. So the first part of the question would be, if that site is a site of the securing of sovereign power and is at the same time a site of performativity, what does that mean for the relationship between sovereign power and performativity? How do you understand that? And the second part of the question would be, is there a way in which we could think of a certain kind of aformativity of the border as well? So if we think a useful kind of comparison might be the strategy of disabling the border that we have with the example of the boat people, right? A kind of general strike against the border, rather than a kind of performance of the border. And so if you see performativity as the only possibility there, or whether you could imagine something, perhaps a more kind of radical refusal of the theater of the border as such.
Okay, I said that since we don't have too much time, that perhaps we should take 3, and you should try to make your questions brief. Can we have the next question, please?